Hello, hope everyone's doing all right today. My name is Martin Betley, and I'm going to be covering my third discussion board post on Thomas Jefferson. And with talking about Thomas Jefferson, obviously, so much information we can gather. We can talk about him. Dissertation's been written on the guy, but we're just going to focus on today on what his legacy was. What he obviously give to society. He gave to society a lot of things, which we're going to go over in a little bit. But there's some interesting comparisons of kind of the good and kind of the bad with him. So let's begin. Obviously, Virginia man, third president of the United States. He was president from 1801 to 1809. Before we get more into the things he did as president, we're going to go back a little bit more. He practiced law he started out practicing law in Virginia, and he did that from about 1767 to 1774. He's one of the key people for drafting the Declaration of Independence. In June 1776, he was part of a 5-man committee to help make that, which he was actually chosen to be the author of the first draft. So there was, we talked about it earlier in the class, there was a few other things. There was a few changes to that draft before it finally became Declaration of Independence. Moving on from there, in 1779, he was the second elected governor from Virginia. So obviously, democracy, parting ways from Britain is starting to take hold more at this point. He held a bunch of other different areas. He was the minister to France as well as Secretary of State. He was a vice president, 1797, and a few cool things we're going to talk about now with his actual presidency. So as earlier I said, he was the third president of the United States of America from 1801 to 1809, and one of the things I think is cool about with him is you see with this the first peacetime transfer of power from one party to another in a modern republic. So there was no major backlash. I mean, it's one of the things that helped found the country where now if you carry it over, you can see the transition from Democrat to Republican to Democrat. There's no wars or battles or anything like that. You could say, like, obviously go back in history, say this is one of the first instances of that. Also, while president, a big one, he helped almost just over double the size of the country with the Louisiana Purchase. So another really good thing right there. You see on his tombstone he wanted to be remembered for just a few basic things. So we're just going to focus now, move on to that portion. So you look at his tombstone, he wants to be remembered for the following things: author of the Declaration of American Independence, of the state of Virginia for religious freedom, and the father of the University of Virginia. So you look at more of those theories instead of political things that he wanted to be remembered for. Now, I mentioned earlier there's some interesting things, both positive and negative, about his legacy. So we talk about things that he was one of the first creators of the Declaration of Independence. He was one of the main people to help actually draft that. We covered that earlier. But interesting thing though, it was estimated that he owned over 175 slaves. And before he died, he only really freed a few of them because they were close to him. But you look at the other major patriots at that time, especially before, during, after Revolution, such as George Washington, people of that caliber, to where sometime around the end of the Revolution, they all gave up they freed their slaves. Jefferson was one of the few who did not do that, and you can see later on, pre-Civil War, that Virginia is still one of those obviously slave states. Just interesting to look at that comparison between being one of the fathers of the Declaration of Independence and slave owners. So just, like I said, interesting. So through that, it's really an interpretation of how you feel on either side of it, to where you feel with the legacy of Thomas Jefferson. He's obviously one of the major players in our country in the founding of it, and definitely interesting. Thank you very much.